What's up, my comic comrades? Darth Maul is easily one of the best characters in all of Star Wars. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. He has been a fan favorite since his debut in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace in 1999. But since his introduction in Episode 1, his history has been fleshed out a lot as he reappeared in the Clone Wars, comics, Rebels, and several other places after his apparent death at the end of The Phantom Menace. So we're stupid excited to break down his full history and how the character has developed and evolved over time. He's just an amazing character, so this is going to be fun. Also, this deep dive into Darth Maul is thanks to today's sponsor, Ravensburger, and their dope new RPG Star Wars Villainous Revenge at Last board game, where you can conquer the galaxy as your favorite Star Wars villains with card strategies inspired by the films, shows, and stories we all love. In this expand-alone box, you can play as Darth Maul or Captain Phasma, and the game can be played on its own or combined with any Star Wars Villainous title. It's ridiculously fun, especially for any Star Wars fan, but we'll talk more about it later. For now, let's talk some Darth Maul. When Darth Maul first appeared in The Phantom Menace in 1999, it was only for about 15 minutes of the entire film. But even with his brief appearance in the movie, he was easily the standout character and what people liked most about Episode 1. So much so, the fandom was pretty upset that Lucas killed him off at the end of the movie. And while George initially had no intentions for the character past that, and we were led to believe that Maul was a one-and-done villain, it certainly didn't stay that way. You heard that correctly. George Lucas originally had no intent on bringing Darth Maul back after Episode 1. In fact, Henry Gilroy, who helped create the Clone Wars, stated that Lucas continued to tell his team for a very long time that he would never bring Maul back. And the reason he had him sliced in half was to make sure no one else could bring him back either. However, years later, fans would rejoice when Lucas decided to bring Maul back in the Clone Wars animated series and tasked Dave Filoni with being the man to make it happen. As stated in an article on /film, quote, "One day Lucas just changed his mind. The story goes Lucas went up to supervising director Dave Filoni and told him to figure out how to bring Maul back. While Filoni and his team worked on how Maul would come back into the fold and become a threat to the Jedi again, Gilroy was charged with explaining how Maul survived being cut in half and thrown down a shaft," end quote. So that's hilarious. Literally, Lucas was gung-ho about Maul being dead for years until one day he just changed his mind and made Filoni figure out a way to bring him back. And let me just say, Filoni and team did a fantastic job, as Maul's resurrection and entire arc in the Clone Wars was phenomenal. He added so much depth and incredible lore and personality to a character we only heard say 2 lines in The Phantom Menace. With that said, before we get into the actual origin and lore of Maul, we want to make it clear we're only going to be sticking to Darth Maul in canon only. Not anything with him that would now fall under the Legends banner. That stuff is amazing, but we want to stick to the main continuity, so we'll probably explore his Legend stuff in another episode. Just wanted to make you aware so everyone is on the same page. With that said, let's get into his origin. First and foremost, Maul is a member of the Night Brothers, being a Dathomirian Zabrak. His mother was the Great Mother Talzin. Talzin was an extremely powerful Force-sensitive witch. So powerful, in fact, she posed a massive threat against Emperor Palpatine, but we'll get to that later. First, let's see how Maul became Palpatine's apprentice in the first place. In Star Wars Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir Issue 1, Sidious tells Dooku while going to visit his captured apprentice Darth Maul that Maul came to him as a child, a not so appreciated gift from Mother Talzin. He then says, "Her spite for me runs deep, and the time has come for me to deal with her." So as we could see from that panel and brief dialogue, Sidious took Maul from Talzin when he was just a boy. But Talzin breaks it down in more detail in Issue 3 while warning Count Dooku that Sidious will one day betray him. She tells Dooku, who has just been captured by Maul, "Sidious seduces you with promises of power, but he already seeks to replace you. Long ago, Sidious came to me on Dathomir. We exchanged secret wisdom, mingled dark side abilities with Night Sister's magics. He promised to make me his right hand, but instead he stole what was most dear to me, my own flesh and blood, my son." Dooku replies, "Maul, your son?" She tells him, "Yes, Count. When Sidious realized Maul's potential, he took him from me and trained him as a Sith. When he was no longer useful, Maul was left to die. Look at him. Look at my son and see your future. Sidious will betray you as he betrayed us, but I will honor our alliance, should you accept it." As we know, Dooku does not take the deal and would be betrayed by Sidious just like Talzin said when he ordered Anakin to take off his head. Anyway, once taken from his mother, Maul would obviously be trained by Sidious to be his Sith apprentice. He was trained to be a fierce Sith assassin and warrior, eventually being given the name Darth Maul. More so than most apprentices, Maul is trained to be a living weapon, a tool to take down anyone Sidious needed gone. This is why he's like a ninja warrior Sith doing doing acrobatic flippies like he's Daredevil or Nightwing. Another thing that made Maul stick out and more menacing was his double-bladed lightsaber. Double-bladed lightsabers have since become synonymous with Maul, as he pretty much put them on the map and made the whole world freak out when we saw it for the first time in the Phantom Menace trailer. Once Maul became an adult and the fully realized apprentice of Darth Sidious, he started to grow impatient with striking the Jedi, something that's explored in the 2017 Darth Maul 5-issue miniseries. The iconic Star Wars scroll in issue 1 of the series says, "In the shadows, an ancient enemy stirs. The Sith, practitioners of the dark side of the Force, long thought destroyed, secretly work to undermine and eventually overthrow the Jedi, the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. Two members of the Sith, Darth Sidious and his apprentice Darth Maul, secretly await their moment to strike. But while Sidious plans an intricate series of deceptions and machinations, Maul grows restless. The moment of revenge is close at hand, and he is unwilling to wait much longer." The series obviously takes place right before The Phantom Menace, and in The Phantom Menace, with only 2 lines of dialogue given to Maul in the entire movie, you could tell he's finally happy to be let loose and fight the Jedi. He says, "Tatooine is sparsely populated. If the trace was correct, I will find them quickly, Master." Sidious says, "Move against the Jedi first. You will then have no difficulty in taking the Queen to Naboo to sign the treaty." Maul tells him, "At last, we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last, we will have revenge." Sidious then says, "You have been well trained, my young apprentice. They will be no match for you." All that to say, the 2017 Darth Maul comic that took place before this clearly sets up that Maul has been itching to be let loose on the Jedi, which is why in The Phantom Menace, he says, "At last, we reveal ourselves to the Jedi," because he wants to tear into them and get some revenge. But we all know that didn't work in his favor, because when he finally came into confrontation with the Jedi, specifically Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, he was able to best and kill Qui-Gon, but immediately after, Obi-Wan avenges his master and slices Maul in half as we see him fall into 2 pieces down a shaft. His appearance in Phantom Menace is what everyone knows, but it's after his apparent death that we really get into his lore and story arcs, if you will. But before we get into that, let's take a look at Star Wars Villainous game system and their latest installment, Revenge at Last, featuring Darth Maul and Captain Phasma. If Ravensburger rings a bell, it's because we brought you their Marvel Villainous game last year for our episode on every version of Loki Explained, which you can watch right here. Anyway, their Villainous universe is really fun, with so many different games and fan favorite storylines. As for Star Wars Villainous Revenge at Last, each villain's deck of cards is designed with a gameplay strategy inspired by the films, shows, and stories we love. The heart of the gameplay is simple. Move your villain's sculpted mover to a new location on their sector board to access the actions at that location. Then use the actions to play your cards, move closer to your objective, and draw from your opponent's fate deck to disrupt their carefully made plans with heroes that disrupt. It's super immersive and easy to lose track of time while you're playing. Overall, Villainous games are known for their immersive game design, with its custom illustrations of iconic Star Wars heroes, evil allies, and scenes, as well as the very cool and stylized sculpted movers. But I think the smartest thing about this Villainous game system is how you can combine the Expand-Alone with characters from any Star Wars Villainous product from 2 to 4 player games, including Darth Vader from Star Wars Villainous Power of the Dark Side, or Boba Fett from Star Wars Villainous Scum and Villainy. It just adds so many fun possible crossovers and combinations. And every version is filled with custom art and details to be appreciated by Star Wars fans of every level. Star Wars Villainous also makes a great gift for any Star Wars fan, whether they're an experienced gamer or new to board and card games. So head over to Target or Target.com to grab the game for yourself or a fellow Star Wars fan, and look for the version with the exclusive special sleeve and mover. You can also grab it at your local game store through any of the links in the description below, or snatch it at rav.wiki/variant. But now let's get into Darth Maul's story arcs. Like I said earlier, Dave Filoni was tasked by George Lucas to bring Darth Maul back in season 4 of the Clone Wars, after Lucas had previously sworn to never bring Maul back, but later changed his mind. My guess would be because the fandom was so loud about wanting more Maul, on top of Lucas really liking Maul as a character, he caved over time. That's not a fact, just my speculation. In any case, it all really starts in season 3 of the Clone Wars during the Dathomir arc, episodes 12 through 14. You see, to get revenge on her former master Count Dooku, Asajj Ventress went to the Night Brother village to pick a warrior that would then be enhanced by Mother Talzin and then brought to Dooku to be his new apprentice, all while being secretly controlled by Ventress and the Night Sisters. The warrior selected was Savage Opress, as we see in episode 13 of season 3, titled Monster. In the same episode, once picked, he was enhanced with magic by Talzin and became massive, the Braun Strowman or Brock Lesnar of the Night Brothers. Once enhanced and a fearsome force to be reckoned with, he was brought to Dooku, who trained him in the way of the Sith. Then in episode 14 of the same season, titled Witches of the Mist, we see Savage continue his Sith training with Dooku, having constructed his own double-bladed lightsaber, which we first see when he's sparring Dooku. Trust me, this all leads to Maul's return. The short of it is, by the end of this episode, Savage realizes he's being used by both Ventress and Dooku, and breaks free of Ventress's spell, which is controlling him, and turns on Dooku, eventually fleeing on his own, returning to Dathomir and Mother Talzin. He tells her, "I was betrayed by Ventress. The Jedi are after me. I'm not nearly strong enough to defeat them all." Talzin says, "Calm yourself. You will be." He says, "I don't understand. Who will teach me?" She then tells him, "You have a brother," with him replying, "But all of my kin were killed." She tells him, "Not all of them. He lives in the Outer Rim in exile." As a crystal ball reveals, it's Darth Maul who is still alive. She says, "You will find him and he will teach you everything you need to know to become even more powerful." This brings us all the way to episode 21 of season 4 titled Brothers, where Savage finally finds Maul where Talzin said he would be. However, Savage is shocked to see Maul has gone crazy, utterly mad, not making much sense at all. We also see he had made himself a robotic spider-like lower half so he could walk around and move. Maul then tells his brother, "Jedi took my legs," and that he wants revenge against the Jedi. So in episode 22 titled Revenge, Savage takes Maul back to Dathomir to see Mother Talzin, who uses her magic to restore his mind and body, even making him new Talon-like robotic legs. With his mind and body now restored, Savage gives him the remaining half of his lightsaber, as Maul says, "I was the apprentice of the most powerful being in the galaxy once. I was destined to become so much more, but I was robbed of that destiny by the Jedi, by Obi-Wan Kenobi." Savage then says, "You must have your revenge, my brother." Maul says, "Yes, we shall start with revenge." Maul and Savage then go to a planet where Maul intends to slaughter innocent children in order to get the attention of the Jedi. Maul then sends out a message to the Jedi saying, "There will be more slaughtering of the innocent unless you come here and face me, Kenobi. Come alone, and if you do not, this world will burn," as he kills several more innocents to let Kenobi know he's serious. Kenobi is obviously shocked that he's back and says to Mace, "You've seen what he's capable of. He's a broken, unbalanced monster. I will go alone. I faced him before, I can do it again." Once Kenobi arrives and comes face to face with Maul, Kenobi says, "I'm not sure I've made your acquaintance," as he's not certain this is indeed the real Maul, as he was sure he killed him when he cut him in half in The Phantom Menace. Maul tells him, "I'm surprised you could have forgotten me so easily after I killed your master and you left me for dead on Naboo." Kenobi then realizes this is indeed Darth Maul, and somehow he is still alive. Darth Maul says, "You may have forgotten me, but I will never forget you. You cannot imagine the depths I would go to stay alive, fueled by my singular hatred for you." Kenobi says, "That may be so, but I defeated you before, and I can defeat you again." Maul says, "Don't be so certain," as Savage appears behind Kenobi, helping his brother. Obviously, a fight ensues between Kenobi, Darth Maul, and Savage Opress, and Darth Maul almost gets his revenge right away, if not for the interference of Ventress, who helps Obi-Wan, and with her help, Kenobi and Ventress are able to get away. And that's literally the finale of season 4. The first episode of season 5, however, in the episode titled Revival, picks up with Darth Maul and Savage Opress yet again, as we see Maul's plan is now to build a criminal empire with his brother by his side, forming the Shadow Collective. The Shadow Collective was formed by allying a bunch of different crime syndicates such as the Hutts, the Black Sun, Pikes, and Death Watch. This all takes place in what is known as the Shadow Conspiracy arc in episodes 1 and 14 through 16 of season 5 of the Clone Wars. In episode 1 of the season titled Revival, Darth Maul has yet another epic battle with Obi-Wan, while Savage is fighting the Jedi Addy. Savage ends up killing her by impaling her with his own horns. This leads Maul and Savage to tag team Obi-Wan once again, but Obi-Wan, using Addy's lightsaber, now double wielding, is able to hold both of them back, even cutting one of Savage's arms off. In the end, with the help of Hondo Ohnaka, Darth Maul and his brother are made to retreat, with Maul even having one of his robotic legs shot off by blaster fire. This leads us to episode 14 of the season titled Eminence, where Darth Maul and Savage Opress are found in their broken ship in space by the Death Watch, who bring them back to their camp. Death Watch then has both of them fixed up, giving Savage a mechanical arm, replacing the one Obi-Wan cut off, and giving Maul brand new mechanical legs. More human-looking legs, giving us the look he would have through season 7 of the Clone Wars. By the end of the episode, Maul allies himself with Death Watch, as they have a common enemy in the Jedi, as the Mandalorians have always been in conflict with the Jedi. Nonetheless, of course, Maul has ulterior motives, wanting to rule Mandalore for himself, and ends up challenging the leader of the Death Watch, Pre Vizsla, to a duel for the right to rule. It's one of the best duels in the Clone Wars, in my opinion, especially because of the weight of the outcome. Maul wins, killing Vizsla, beheading him, claiming the Darksaber for himself and his rightful place as the leader of Death Watch. And while most of the Death Watch honor the outcome of the battle, Bo-Katan says never, no outsider will ever rule Mandalore, so her and several others flee, not wanting to follow Maul. Now this is where crap really hits the fan, because now with the Shadow Collective formed and Maul being the new leader of Death Watch, wielding the Darksaber, he comes into confrontation with his former master Darth Sidious in episode 16 of season 5 titled The Lawless. When Maul comes face to face with his former master for the first time since his apparent death, he bows before him saying, "Master," with Sidious saying, "I am most impressed to see you have survived your injury." Darth Maul replies, "I have used your training, master, and I have built all this in hopes of returning to your side. But Sidious sees right through this and says, how unfortunate that you are attempting to deceive me. You have become a rival, and engages battle with Maul and Savage. We then proceed to get top 3, some people might even say #1 lightsaber duel in all of the Clone Wars, or even just Star Wars in general, when Darth Sidious solos Darth Maul and Savage Opress as he dual wields lightsabers against them. It is absolutely phenomenal, and the first time we really get to see Sidious move like that, and man, he is scary. The way he moved in this fight is absolutely ridiculous. It truly showed how powerful he is in the dark side of the Force. He was moving like Spider-Man, but with incredible Force powers and dual lightsabers. In the end, he killed Savage by double impaling him in the stomach, and then uses the Force to throw Maul around despite his best efforts of going after his former master with his original lightsaber and the Darksaber. But after Sidious throws Maul around like a rag doll with the Force, Maul finds himself on the floor begging for mercy, and his master says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. I have other uses for you," as he tortures him with Force lightning. Now, this capture directly leads into the Son of Dathomir 4-issue comic series that we talked about at the very beginning of the episode that gives us Darth Maul's origin, so to speak, including how he ended up with Darth Sidious and became trained in the dark side of the Force. In that 4-issue series, we see that Sidious kept Darth Maul prisoner and let him escape, knowing he would go back to his mother Talzin in order for Maul to bring her out in the open so Sidious could kill her, as he knows she's a powerful Force that's against him and he cannot have any enemies alive that powerful. So Sidious does what he does best, manipulation, and by the end of the story in issue 4, he tricked Mother Talzin to come out into the open, now being fully restored, with her saying, "I am whole, I am returned." But Sidious just looks at her saying, "You are about to die," knowing she's playing right into his trap, as he had General Grievous waiting for her to show so he can deliver a fatal blow, as Grievous puts 2 lightsabers straight through her chest as Maul watches, screaming, "No!" He's then pulled away by his Mauldalorians, who are saying, "We have to run, Lord Maul. If you die, everything is lost." The 4-issue series actually fills in the gap between his capture and his reappearance in Season 7 of the Clone Wars, the final season. Because as we know, Maul would appear once again for the final season of the Clone Wars in episodes 9 through 12 in the story titled The Siege of Mandalore. In the final arc in the last 4 episodes of the Clone Wars, we see Ahsoka Tano returning, asking the Jedi to help restore Mandalore so that it doesn't fall victim to Darth Maul's Mandalorian loyalists. All the while, Maul's having visions, having foreseen Order 66 and the fall of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire. Because of this, he tries to get Ahsoka on his side so the two of them can stop Darth Sidious. She obviously doesn't believe him, and the two engage in yet another amazing lightsaber battle. The Clone Wars basically has the best lightsaber battles ever, at least the most amount of them. In any case, the battle eventually leads to Darth Maul's capture, but once he's captured, Order 66 is activated shortly after, which puts the galaxy in complete and utter chaos. At this point, Ahsoka's like, "Alright, I'm gonna free you as a distraction for the clone troopers since they have turned on me and are trying to kill me because of whatever the hell's going on." Maul then ultimately escapes and flees somewhere in the galaxy. From here, the next time we would see Maul in the Star Wars canon timeline is Solo, a Star Wars story where Ray Park would reprise his role as Darth Maul once again, with Sam Witwer also reprising his role as the voice of Darth Maul for a brief scene at the end of the film. In the scene, we learn that Kira is part of Crimson Dawn, which at the time was led by Darth Maul, who was also the leader of the Shadow Collective. Kira calls him to let him know of Voss's failure and murder by the thief hired named Beckett. He says, "Bring the ship and come to me on Dathomir, and then you and I will decide what to do with the traitor Beckett and his accomplices." She says she's on her way, and Maul tells her, "You and I will be working much more closely from now on." This was an awesome addition to the film that went absolutely nowhere. It would have been so awesome to get a Crimson Dawn movie with Kira and Maul that played off of this scene, dealing with all the crime syndicates and Maul being the leader of Crimson Dawn, and kind of basically doing what they did with Maul in the Clone Wars, just a continuation of that, to see his progression in live action with Ray Park reprising his role. But because Solo did so poorly at the theaters, it went nowhere. From here we go to Star Wars Rebels, another amazing animated Star Wars show. We first see Maul in Star Wars Rebels in Season 2, episodes 21 and 22, titled Twilight of the Apprentice, Part 1 and 2. In this 2-episode arc, Darth Maul is kind of introduced as an eccentric old man who is stranded at the Sith Temple on the planet Malachor. It's here he meets the main character of the series, Ezra Bridger, who's looking to get back to his friends. Maul says, "You're here for the same reason I came here years ago, to seek knowledge, which is at the temple, but I'm too old to open the door." Ezra asks, "What's inside?" Maul tells him, "Help me and find out," clearly manipulating Ezra. Ezra reluctantly agrees, but still doesn't necessarily trust Maul, who tells Ezra his name is Old Master. And Ezra tells him his name is Jabba, which leads to one of the best jokes in all of Star Wars, that Ezra is also Jabba. But by episode 22, Maul's true intentions come to light. He seeks revenge against the Sith, telling the rebels, "I'm the enemy of your enemy," wanting to take Vader and the Sith down. Maul then helps Kanan and Ahsoka defeat the Inquisitors, but right after blinds Kanan with his lightsaber and reveals that he intends to make Ezra his new apprentice, and tells Ahsoka and Kanan that he's having him activate the temple, or more precisely this battle station that he will use to get his revenge on all of his enemies. But of course, Ezra does not become his apprentice, and the now blinded Kanan is able to throw Maul off the Sith temple. From here, Maul would reappear in 3 episodes of season 2, the episodes Holocrons of Fate, Visions and Voices, and Twin Sun. Now, throughout these episodes, Maul is still all about the Sith holocron and wanting to combine it with a Jedi holocron in order to reveal secrets that would enable him to destroy the Sith. And the kicker is, he convinces Ezra to help him do this by kidnapping the Ghost Crew to force Ezra and Kanan to bring the Sith holocron to him, where they would then combine it with a Jedi holocron. Because if they open these holocrons together, any question they ask will be answered. They eventually do combine them, with Ezra wanting to know how to destroy the Sith. So with Ezra asking that, Maul says he seeks something much simpler, but equally elusive: hope. While they combine the holocrons, Kanan rescues the Ghost Crew and then finds Ezra and Maul and breaks them up from finding the answers they're seeking, knowing it will lead to no good. After breaking them up, Maul says he lives, and takes off in his ship. After this, we would see Maul one last time in episode 20 of season 3 in the episode Twin Suns. The episode opens up with Maul wandering the desert on Tatooine looking for Kenobi, telling us that's who the holocrons revealed lives. This is the episode where we get the iconic line of Maul saying, "I am lost, and yet I could feel his presence. So close, I could see him in my mind's eye. Kenobi." Towards the end of the episode, Maul finds Kenobi in the desert and they have their final confrontation. Maul realizes that Kenobi is on Tatooine for a reason. He's not there to hide, he's there with a purpose to protect someone. At this point, Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber, quickly going to his younger stance with the saber held above his head and 2 fingers pointed forward, giving us the Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan Kenobi pose. But then quickly realizes, "I'm not that man anymore, I'm wiser," and then moves to the Alec Guinness Obi-Wan stance, but is still like, "No." And then one last time he goes to his old master Qui-Gon stance as a subtle way to taunt Maul. And once Maul sees the Qui-Gon stance, he's like, "Oh, I know that move. I've beaten that guy before." And then tries to beat Obi-Wan the same way he beat his master. But a much wiser Obi-Wan knows what's coming, and then in 3 moves defeats Maul, slicing right through his saber in the move that he defeated Qui-Gon with. And the moment Obi-Wan defeats Darth Maul so quickly, Maul realizes this isn't an old, worn, beaten down Jedi. This is a Jedi on active duty who is at the top of his game, meaning this is the most important job he's ever had. Something that Sam Witwer, the voice of Darth Maul, has pointed out in several interviews. He explains this whole moment way more eloquently. But nonetheless, before Maul dies, he asks Obi-Wan, "Tell me, is it the Chosen One?" Obi-Wan says he is, with Maul saying, "Finally, he will avenge us," before dying in Obi-Wan's arms, comforted in knowing that the person his enemy is protecting will ultimately destroy the Sith. Now, some of you may be asking, why would Obi-Wan tell Maul that Luke is the Chosen One, as that's who he is protecting, when we all know that is Anakin? Well, you can interpret it in 2 ways. One, Obi-Wan truly believes that Luke is the Chosen One, because after everything that happened with Anakin, why would he still believe he's the Chosen One? I mean, would you if you were Obi-Wan? Or 2, he just simply lied to give Maul hope, as he felt bad for him despite everything he put him through. And that, my friends, is the end of Darth Maul's arc, ending with a tragic yet poetic death. His whole arc in canon was very poetic, and I love that he died somewhat happy that the Chosen One would defeat the Sith. But from here, let's get into powers and abilities. As for his physical abilities, he has enhanced strength and speed. He is way stronger than a normal human thanks to his intense training in the dark side of the Force. Because of this, he is extremely strong, agile, and fast. You combine this with his acrobatic fighting style, and you have one of the biggest threats in the galaxy. Maul also has an insane pain tolerance. I mean, the guy survived being cut in half by Obi-Wan, surviving through his sheer willpower and hatred, all fueled by the dark side of the Force. Speaking of the dark side of the Force, he is extremely proficient in it, having such abilities as Force Push, Pull, and Jump. Force Sensitivity, which means Maul is able to sense others and even their emotions or movements, allowing him to react appropriately. Besides being extremely proficient with the Force, he is also a fantastic lightsaber duelist. As we know, he is most known for wielding his double-bladed lightsaber, or saber staff, which takes an extraordinary amount of skill to use properly. He uses Form 7 of lightsaber combat, which focuses on ferocity and aggressiveness, making him an unyielding hurricane of an opponent. In general, he's such an expert lightsaber duelist, he is able to hold off several Jedi at the same time. I mean, we literally saw him do this in his first appearance when he held off Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon simultaneously. He is easily one of the most feared lightsaber duelists in the galaxy. But on top of all of that, Darth Maul was also an expert martial artist, being extremely lethal without a lightsaber or use of the Force. He also has a very strategic and tactical mind, being very cunning and an expert of manipulation, as we saw during the Clone Wars, manipulating the crime syndicates into doing his bidding, forming the Shadow Collective, which he was the leader of, with all that leading to him becoming the leader of Death Watch, wielding the Darksaber. He even became the leader of Crimson Dawn. He's also had different cybernetic legs after his defeat by Obi-Wan on Naboo. All of his robotic legs gave him enhanced mobility and allowed him to modify and enhance his legs as needed. Maul has way more traits and abilities like mind manipulation and survival skills. The point is, he is easily one of the most threatening characters in all of Star Wars. That, my friends, brings us to reading recommendations. Certainly check out Star Wars Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, his 2017 Marvel series, and then read his Legends stuff, which is also really good. We'll probably explore Maul and Legends in a future episode because there's a ton of great stuff that came from it. But in any case, as for his Legend books, read Star Wars Darth Maul from his 2000 series, Darth Maul Shadowhunter, The Wrath of Darth Maul, and Darth Maul Death Sentence. That's definitely enough to get all of you started. But before we clock out, we want to remind you not to forget to pick up your Star Wars Villainous Revenge at Last board game. There's no better way to inject some fun into your week than to take over the galaxy with a saber staff. Yes, I probably need to talk with someone professionally about that perspective, but my gaming instincts are peak. So make sure to use our links in the description below to grab it, or you could also find it at your local game store. And with that, we've reached the end of our history of Darth Maul. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. And let us know in the comments what other Star Wars characters you would like to see us give their own episodes in the future. Other than that, we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.